Hello everyone. So I'm going to jump right into part 2 of our online journal workshop here. And I'm going to start with some more embellishments. We did the longer ones and now I'm going to do the shorter ones. Now the measurements of these can vary a little bit. You could do 4 by 6, or I just happen to have these scrap pieces left over, so I'm going to be doing mine at 3.5 by 5.5. Again, you could do like 4 by 6 or 3 by 5, or do like I'm doing at the 3.5 by 5.5. Again, I'm just using some scraps that I had left over from things that we made in part 1. So it's up to you how you might want to size these embellishments. And then I'm just going to take and apply a little glue at the very top there and set it off to the side, because the decorating part of this will come a little later. And I want to make 2 of these. I am going to round off the corners with my chomper there. You can use your scissors if you don't have a chomper. So here you can see is where I'm going to make the second one, and again I'm going to do the same measurements at the 3.5 width by 5.5 in height. And then I'm going to do the same thing and just apply a little glue at the very top and round off the corners. Now, you don't have to round off the corners, that's up to you. I like to have the corners rounded. I don't know. I like the way that it looks as opposed to having those pointed corners there. But again, it's up to you. And then you'll set this off to the side and we'll decorate these a little later on in the video. And so now you'll have your 2 smaller embellishments done. Again, with the first part of this workshop, I'm going to be putting together the components that go inside your journal. I think you'll see as we progress through this, you'll see how it'll start to come together. And when we get to where we're building the signatures, we're just going to be able to take and grab all these inserts and put them inside, and it'll be really easy to build your journal from that point in moving forward. So what I'm doing right now is going to do 4 hidden paper clips. And to do that, I started with some craft cardstock. And you're going to want to make sure that your cardstock is a nice heavier duty cardstock. I didn't do that and I should have. And you're going to cut your 4 pieces of craft cardstock at 3 inches in width by 6 inches in height. And then you're going to take some lighter weight cardstock, like what I have showing here, this floral cardstock, and you're going to cut 4 pieces of that at 2.5 inches in width by 5 inches in height. So again, you'll want to take some craft cardstock, or you could do any solid colored cardstock. You just want to make sure it's a heavier cardstock, and cut 4 pieces of that at 3 inches width by 6 inches in height. And then take some lighter weight cardstock, like I have my floral there, and cut that at 2.5 inches width by 5 inches in height. Then you're going to take your scoreboard and you're going to score each piece down the middle. So you'll want to score the craft cardstock or your solid cardstock at 3 inches. And you'll do this for each of those 4 pieces. And then after you get done scoring those 4 pieces of your craft cardstock or your solid colored cardstock, you're going to take your lighter weight cardstock like the one I chose was that floral cardstock. And you're going to score that down the center at 2.5 inches. And you'll do that for all 4 pieces as well. And these pieces here are going to go inside of the craft or solid color cardstock. So you do want to make sure that you follow the measurements of 3 inches in width by 6 inches for the craft cardstock, and then the 2.5 inches by 5 inches for the lighter weight cardstock. And so after you get done scoring all of your pieces, you're going to want to get some larger paper clips. Again, I didn't really have any really large paper clips, and those would have worked better than what I show, but they still were large enough to make these hidden paper clips. And I liked the ones that you'll be seeing here, these ones. I bought these off of Amazon. I was able to get like 3 containers of them, but they come in these different colors, which makes them nice, and they have that nice coating to them as well. And so I'm just going to pick out some white and pink ones. I think that kind of goes with the color combination that I have going on. So, but again, you could use silver, you could use gold, and if you do have the larger paper clips, those would probably work better than what I'm showing. But these still will work. And then what you're going to do is take each paper clip and you're going to position it in the middle of your lighter weight cardstock. So the ones that you measured at the 2.5 inches by 5 inches, the smaller pieces. And you want to make sure that you don't push your paper clips all the way down. You want to leave part of that paper clip hanging up. And that's so later on we can put a charm through it or run some ribbon through it when we get to the decorating part of this. And then the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to get an X-Acto knife, and you'll be cutting a little slit in the middle on that fold line on your craft or solid paper, just large enough for the paper clip to slide through. And I just eyeballed it. And as you can see, it's big enough for the paper clip to go through. And you'll do this for all 4 pieces. Okay, so now I'm just taking some of my leftover trim and I'm going to start decorating our hidden clip here. And you can use any scrap trim that you might have laying around, and I'm just kind of piecing things together is all I'm doing here. So you might decide to do something totally different than what I do. And you might have different trims than what I have as well, but you know, this is a great little project for getting out your little scrap pieces and just kind of taking your little snippets and gluing them together to, you know, give that layered appearance of these little different trims on your hidden paper clip. And I did end up pulling this off because I remembered that I used this thinner cardstock. And so, as I was saying earlier, I felt that, if I added this eyelet lace, it would make that layer of cardstock more durable. But if you used a heavier piece of cardstock, then you could probably get by with not having to put fabric or heavier trim over yours, and you could just start with putting some snippets of trim together and then adding on your ephemera pieces. But I wanted that extra durability, especially with it being a hidden paper clip, something that might get handled a little more in your journal. And the other thing I like about the eyelet lace is it kind of gives it that shabby chic look, which I really like. So now I'm just taking and figuring out how I want to arrange these ephemera pieces and how I want to kind of start decorating this. One thing I like to do between paper layers is take some tulle. I think this is a great way to kind of break things up a little bit, and it gives it that added texture as well. So I just take and cut a little piece of tulle and apply that down onto my eyelet lace, and then I'm going to take a little strand of pearls. I just happened to find these from a previous project. Again, this is something great that you can use your trims or little pieces of jewelry, whatever you might have laying around. And I decided to take the little ticket there, and I'm going to just apply a little glue at the top left edge there and adhere it to that bottom right corner of my flowers. I wanted to make sure I didn't cover up the words either. Now at this point, I still haven't glued the flower piece down. I wanted to first make sure before I glued that down, I had everything figured out as far as what I was going to be using, how I wanted to layer everything. So one thing I thought of doing was taking my smaller hole punch and just punching a hole on each side of that piece of ephemera, that number 7 piece of ephemera there. And then I'm just taking some broken chain from a necklace and running a strand of that through each side of where I punched those holes. I was able to pick up like 3, 4, 5 pounds of broken chain a long time ago off of eBay, and so it's wonderful if you can get on eBay and you see where someone's offering this. I use broken chain in a lot of projects that I do. And then I decided to take one of the smaller flower ephemera pieces, and I'm going to add a little pearl in the center of that. And I believe that the pearls did come in the kits, so you'd be able to use those. If you didn't get a kit, you could use whatever pearls you might have. You could use some rhinestones if you don't have pearls. So you could use a little lace flower over the top of it. And now I'm taking another one of the flower ephemera pieces because I thought I wanted to add an extra layer on top of those flowers. I really love to layer, as you know, but I decided to, the flowers that have the ticket there, and I'm going to cut the outer section of those flowers off from that piece, and I want to be careful not to cut into that ticket as I'm cutting those outer flower sections off of there, because I end up using these later on. That way I'm not wasting these pieces of ephemera. I'm able to use them as efficiently as possible without there being a lot of waste. And you'll see as I start to put this all together exactly what I am talking about here. But again, I do want to be careful that I don't cut into my ticket there. And it probably would have helped if I'd used some smaller scissors. Gosh, I think I used the biggest pair that I could find. So you can see I have that center flower cut off, and I'll probably use that later. And now I'm just figuring out how I want to put all of this together. So I decided to take a little bit of that trim, just add another added layer to that section with the flower section with the ticket. And you can see how all those little extra snippets of lace, the added layers, just really make a big difference. And now I'm just taking some fabric glue and gluing that to the back of my flower piece there, and I'm just going to kind of hold that in place for a little bit, make sure it's glued down pretty good. And you'll be able to see, you know, rather than just having this flat flower piece here, I'll now have these beautiful layers built up by cutting out that middle flower piece there. And I'm just going to take a foam square and figure out how I want to layer this with that number 7 piece of ephemera there. And then I'm going to go ahead and lay that down and then take 2 foam squares, apply that to the back of that number 7 there, and it holds that chain down as well, and place that on top. And now I have these beautiful 3D like layers. But you know, it's up to you. Maybe you like to have everything flatter on your piece. It's, you know, this is your time to create and have fun, and you might not want to do it exactly like I do it, or you might. And I'm going to finish it off with that little flower piece of ephemera there, put my little pearl in the center of that, and call it done. And this is a really fun little project to do. You could sit down and make 10, 15, 20 of these, put them together, you know, in a grouping of like 4 or 5, and give them as Happy Mail, give them as little gifts. They're just, I love them. So I might later on come back to this and add some charms to the top or some ribbon. I'm not sure at this point. But one thing you do want to do, and I should have done this first, is you want to take that craft piece or your solid piece of cardstock, and you want to glue that down to that lighter weight cardstock. You want to make sure you do not get glue on your paper clip. You're kind of making a U under where that paper clip is, as you can see here, and you're just going to glue your solid piece of cardstock down onto your lighter piece or your smaller piece of cardstock that's in the middle. And so after you do this, that middle section there is the only thing that will really open up, and it has that paper clip inside, so then you have that clip that you can use on your journal pages. Okay, let's go ahead and decorate another one. So I'm going to start off the same way. I'm taking my white piece of eyelet trim here, but this time I'm going to kind of position it differently, and I have this gold scrap piece of trim, and I'm just going to take snippets of trim and start layering them. And again, you'll probably have different trim than what I do, so you know, you can just use what you might have on hand. You could use the same color ranges, maybe you have some gold trim. If you don't have gold, you could use that grayish color, or a brown tone would probably work. But all I'm doing is just taking little pieces of trim and just layering them down onto my clip here. And there's extra section of that flower piece that I cut off earlier, and I loved the way that art journal tag looked on top. But before I glue that down, I want to take a piece of tulle, and I found out that those foam squares hold that down really nicely. It holds that tulle down as opposed to the glue and having to hold the glue in place and then you get glue all over your finger. You could just use a foam square to hold that down. And then I'm going to take a couple more foam squares and apply those to my tag. And then I'm taking a few more snippets of trim and just adding in a little more color variation there, more texture, more layers, 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 layers. So if you are working on something, you know, and you have all these little pieces of trim, don't throw them out because they work perfectly for this sort of project. And I'm really getting down and using the major scrap pieces of trim here. But I wanted that black. I think black's a wonderful accent color, especially it ties in with that tag that I decided to use there too. I just kind of felt like it kind of makes everything kind of pop with that black. And I'm just adding a little more lace and probably add a few pearls. And again, you can see where when you add in just those little layers of trim, different layers, and you use contrast. So I have the gold and then I switch over to this cream color of lace and the black, and it really just is eye-catching. It's those little things, you hear me say it all the time, the little things that just make the biggest statement. And then I'm just going to add a few pearls there. And I'll probably take and add in a little more broken chain down there at the bottom of that tag, just to kind of tie it in with the first clip that I did there. And it's just something I have laying around, so I figure why not use it, right? So after I add this, I think I am done. And then I wanted to make sure I got something else done aside from just decorating these hidden clips. I wasn't sure on time, so I'm going to do two, and if there's time I'll come back and decorate the other two. But for now, hopefully this gives you an idea of how you can decorate these and how you might want to decorate the other two. Now this next section, I have to say, I'm going to leave it totally up to you if you want to do this section, because this was just something I was experimenting with. I really didn't have much of an idea what I was doing. I had absolutely no idea how it would turn out. It kind of turned out neat though, so I decided to go ahead and include it in this video. So what I did is I took a piece of 12 by 12 paper. It was not cardstock, it was paper. And I just took and I folded it in half so it met up with those corners going diagonally. And then I folded it in half again, and then I'm taking it with that one side there and folding it up in half, and then the other side folding that up in half. And I did slow the video down in this section so you could see, because this is kind of hard to explain how I did all of this. So I slowed the video way down so you would be able to visually see how I did this, because I didn't really have any instructions. It was something I wasn't even sure if I was going to include. And now I'm just taking and folding up those two corners, and you can see it meets up in those fold lines that I did previously. Now this third one going up, I'm taking and I'm bringing that top pointed section there, and I'm bringing it up until it meets with the left and right points. So you have that left point and that right point, and I have that center point, and it kind of looks like a W going across there. And that center part of the W, that point meets up with the left and right points. I hope that makes sense. And you do want to make sure that that top middle point lines up with that fold line going down the center. I was off, and as you can see, I had to kind of realign it to get it to where everything lines up. That is pretty important. And then I'm just going to take and turn it and fold that top middle point there, just fold it back till it meets that bottom fold. And then I'm going to do the same with the other side and just bring it down until those left and right points meet up, and just fold it straight across. So everything kind of meets up there. And then I'm lost. Then I didn't quite know what to do. And so what I did is I flipped it over, as you can see. And when I did that, I noticed that I had these two kind of pockets here that you can see on the left and right. And then on the other side, I also had this pocket that I could make. So I have a pocket here, a pocket there, and then on the other side, I'd have a pocket in there. And then I just kind of goofed around and checked to see how those postcards would fit in there. I decided that I wanted to make it so it wasn't as wide, so I did do about an inch up from there and made another fold. And again, I slowed everything down, hoping you'd be able to follow along. So my thought is that white triangle piece that you're seeing there, I thought I would take my leftover piece of printed paper that I did from the Winged Elements collection, and right at that black line, I'm just taking my X-Acto knife and going down to where I'm leaving about 1/4 of an inch at each edge, maybe about 1/2 an inch at each edge, and then running that white triangular section through as far as I can, and then folding it up over that section of my paper that right along that black line there. And now I have this really cool hinged pocket section to my journal page. And here I'm just trying to figure it all out because I didn't know what I made. You know, like I said, it was kind of an experiment. I was just goofing around. And so I wasn't sure if I was going to include this in this workshop, but I actually, when I got it all done, I thought it turned out really cool. So I did want to be sure to include it and leave it up to you if you wanted to include it in your journal or not. And now I'm just going to take and glue the top and bottom section there to create my pocket on that flap there. And then I will need to apply some glue underneath that to have it so it holds in place better. And then I just kind of tucked the very tip of that piece there under that black line of the paper where I made the slit. And here's where I'm taking the glue and I'm just applying a thin section right underneath that piece there to secure it down. So this just kind of prevents it from moving around too much when you flip it back and forth. Now I do have that middle piece right here, and I just take and flip that over to the other side and tuck it in that pocket there. That's all I did there. And then I'm taking some of the lined paper and I'm just folding it for now, and I'm going to put that inside on each section so I have some journaling space. And I'll probably go through and do something fun, decorate it up a little bit later on, but I think you can kind of see where this is going. And so you can take some of those postcards and tags and stuff them in those pockets there. Okay, so the next thing I need to do is find what page I want to glue this down onto. And then once I decide which design I want to use, which printed design, I did want to make sure I printed it onto the heavier cardstock. So I printed it onto the 110-pound cardstock. You could use any paper that you might have on hand, but I would advise using a heavier piece of cardstock. And then I'm just taking this piece of dictionary paper, it was a scrap piece that I had left over, and I'm cutting a strip of this to place over that white section of my little pocket thing that I created. And you'll see here what I mean. So I used that to kind of cover that white section, decorate it up a little bit. And I found it ties in nicely with that postcard that I chose. So I have those same color tones kind of going through there. And the other thing with the book paper, it's a thinner paper. So I don't want to use anything like trim, which would make it hard for you to take that section and flip it back and forth. That is one thing you want to keep in mind if you do this. And then I'm just trimming everything down. I did decide to take some black trim, some little black velvet trim, and I'm going to place that over where I have that black line there. But before I do that, I do want to glue that little corner down where I have it tucked in, just to make sure it stays in place. And then I'll apply my trim over that to give it more of a finished edge there. And then I want to take my piece of cardstock that I printed my design onto and just cut off those white borders. and then I'll be gluing that section down onto this piece of cardstock here. I did make a score line at that 6 1/8 of an inch, and I did this so I would know where to glue my pocket hinge section to where I could line everything up, and you'll see what I mean here in a little bit. So you can see where I have those folds all lining up with that score line. And then I'm taking that hinge section there, and I'm going to apply some glue at the top and bottom because I thought I would create another pocket. Again, I'm just kind of winging this to see at this point, how it will all come together. And I was surprised it was a little better than I thought. I just wanted something different. I mean, yes, you could skip this and you could insert an envelope. It would be much easier to do that for sure. And there would be absolutely nothing wrong in doing that. If you wanted to skip this and use an envelope and create a pocket hinge that way, you could do that. And here I'm just kind of figuring out little ways to decorate it up a little bit. I used one of the butterfly ephemera pieces, and then I'm taking one of the journal cards from the Winged Elements collection and some cardstock to create another embellishment. And this one I'm going to glue on the side, not at the top, because I want it to attach to the side of the page there. And again, you'll be able to see here in a little bit what I mean. And there you can see I glued it on the side so it will slide onto the side of the page there. And then it will hold those two pages together. And again, I'll probably come back and I'll definitely do a little more decorating with this. I'm just kind of figuring out how this is all going to come together at this point. I liked the butterfly there because it kind of angled. It had the same angles with the wings and the way that pocket was. And then I'm going to take and add a little bit of trim here and there. It's so easy to decorate with your scrap pieces of trim, and it just adds so much. So these little scraps of trim that you got in your kits, if you were able to get a kit, you can see how you can cut them, and you just need little pieces here and there. It really does go a long way. And I'm just kind of playing around, figuring out where I want to add that added texture with the scrap pieces of trim. Okay, so you got to see how I added that little bit of trim here and there, and now I'm just kind of figuring out which pieces of ephemera, which journal cards I might want to add in. I like the Paris card because it tied in with the color scheme that I had going on the other side with the lady there. And now I'm just taking another one of the designs that I printed, this time in the winged elements, and I'm going to cut it down to size to decorate that other side there, that white, all that white from the other side of my signature page. And I did decide to score that left edge of my paper there about 1/4 of an inch to create a fold, a little hinge there. And I'm going to glue down just that left side of my paper there that I scored. For now, I might glue the whole thing down. I just kind of wanted to leave it to where I had some options. So, you know, later on as we get going, I might decide to incorporate something more. And that's why I did that instead of gluing the whole thing down at this point. And so again, I'm just going to glue down that left side of my paper where I made that score line and adhere it to my signature here. And you might notice that score line that I have on my white cardstock there underneath where, you know, I glued down my page. And that was a mistake. So pay no attention to that. In fact, that's why I placed my printed paper, the one that has telegram there. That's why I placed that over that. So now I'm going to do the other side and take another piece here, and I'm using a design from the Winged Elements collection, and I just kind of eyeballed it. I didn't really take any measurements. I just wanted to have a piece big enough to cover the back side of that signature page. And then I'm going to glue down just the left side, doing the same thing that I did on the other side. So if I want to add lined paper, if I want to incorporate something else, I'll have the flexibility to do that. Okay, so now I'm just trying to figure out what else I might want to do here. I loved the way this strip, this leftover scrap piece I had, I liked how that looked. It just gave that added contrast that I thought it needed, you know, that white and black. And so I decided to back that against some cardstock, and I'll just glue the top and bottom sections to create another pocket. Now I decided to use a smaller scrap piece here because I just wanted to use up my scraps. And the main thing is to make sure that right edge has that extra durability, because that is where when you slide your pocket, or when you slide your tags and your journal cards through that pocket that we're going to be creating, that's where you need that extra durability, not so much on the left side as you do the right side. So I hope that makes sense. It's almost 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm getting tongue-tied. All right, but I hope you all were able to follow along with this section. It really was something totally different, and I'm always trying to think out of the box, and I hope you're enjoying all of this so far. And I did try to make it as clear as I possibly could. And so I'm going to just finish it off by adding a few more details here and there. I'm Adeline. Adeline. Yes, Adeline. That'll be my new word for for this video, because I always like to come up with new words. Yep, Adeline. There's a new one for all of you. Oh my goodness. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I have that white section there on my little pocket by the butterfly there. And I'm just going to cut a section of my Winged Elements paper that I printed. And I just need to make sure that I have it cut wide enough to cover that white area there. Because it's already cut to size, it's at the 8.5 by 11 inches in height, I just need to make sure my width is, again, wide enough to cover the white area inside my pocket. And so I'm just going to kind of just tuck that down in there, which, as you'll see here, I find out it's much easier to just pull that white flap out and try to glue it on that way. It's much easier that way. And so I'm just going to glue that down and trim it. And then I think it'll be close to done. I really do hope all of you are enjoying the workshop so far. I have part 3 pretty much done. And so I plan on going over how to decorate the parchment paper, do a little decoupage with some napkins, some stamping, work with some of the lined papers, finish up a few more of the embellishments and decorating those. And so that will be covered in part 3. So I have my piece glued down. I'm going to take my brayer and just make sure that I have those edges, glued down really good, and then trim everything. And I think this is where I call it pretty much done. I will, like I said, probably go back and decorate it up a little more as we incorporate it into the journal. This whole part 2 was, again, just building certain components that are going to go inside your journal, going to go inside a signature page. Now this one ended up being an unplanned signature page, but I want to put in more journal pages for sure. Maybe some tea-stained papers, and kind of just work from this, build it up a little more. But I love the way it turned out. It's just something kind of different, and I'll probably play around with, doing folding techniques like what I showed you here a little more, just seeing what I can come up with. And I don't know, this to me is the way that you learn and you discover new things. And so yeah, I really never would have thought to take my Parisian charm collection and mix it with the Winged Elements. That came about because my mom did these 2 kits, and I thought I'd incorporate them both. So for those of you who bought maybe the Winged Elements kit, or those of you who bought the one with the Parisian charm papers in it, you could at least have a way to use some of the items from your kit in making your journal, in following along in this workshop. Now, if you don't have any of the printables and you didn't buy any of the digitals, it's not a big deal, because you could still do the same exact technique that I'm doing with different papers. But I do hope all of you had a lot of fun. I know I did. I just love sitting up in my studio and just using my hands and creating with my hands, making something with my hands. And, just the whole journey of it all, and just the escape. There's so much that I love about it. And I'm really excited to see when it's all put together in a journal. And then you have the finished journal that you can look through it. And I really try to make things to where they're interactive, where it's got a lot of, interesting pockets like the one we just did, and flaps and so forth. So I'm just finishing everything off by distressing those edges. I'm using the Distress Oxide in Abandoned Coral. Thought that was a good shade to coordinate with the papers and everything that I used. And now I just need to do the same thing that I did on the other side with that white section of that pocket, and take one of my printed designs, and I'm going to cover that white space, and then it will be done. Well, I think it'll be done. I mean, it will probably be done for this part of the workshop, but I do plan on coming back to it later, and probably will build from it, we definitely want to add in some more pages, but for now I'm just going to cover up that white space and call it done for now. So here I'm just kind of being lazy, and I used my pencil to mark where I needed to make that cut, and I'm going to take and just slide that in that pocket like so. And yeah, I love the way it's coming together. I really do. And I'm excited to pick up and continue, building this signature page. But I don't do it in part 3, so it will probably be more like in part 4, part 5. Right now, we're still in the whole section of building each component. So we have our embellishments and our hidden paper clips. And so for part 3, as I stated, we'll be working on doing a little decorating with the parchment paper bag that we made, and a little decoupage, that sort of thing, a little decorating some of those components. But yeah, the building of the signature pages probably will come in part 4, part 5. All right, well, I think we're at a good stopping point, almost an hour into this. And so I hope you all enjoyed this part of the workshop, part 2. I know it was a little different, a little out there, and I hope it wasn't too confusing. I did try to slow things down so you would be able to follow along. And yeah, I'd love to hear your comments. Let me know if you're actually creating alongside and making your own journal. I'd love to hear. And hopefully I'll catch all of you back for part 3. I hope to have that published here in the next few days. I will be meeting with Blue Fern on Thursday and getting my order, the rest of my order, for filling the Jane Memoirs pre-orders. So those will be getting shipped out this weekend. I still have a few Carabelle orders that I'm waiting on. Carabelle is really backed up right now. I did get an email from them a few days ago, and they're just really, really backed up. So I'm not sure when my order is going to be shipped. I did place it quite a while ago, like almost a month ago. And it's just with this lockdown, everything's just been a little bit crazy. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I can help you answer any questions you might have in regard to any orders you might be waiting on. But the Jane Memoirs pre-orders, those will be shipped out this weekend. So they are coming. The long wait is almost over. Yay! Actually, I know some of you have had to wait like 3 weeks or so, and I'm going to be filling yours first because I do fill everything first come first serve. We just weren't anticipating on everything selling out quite so quick, and I didn't know at that time everything was going to sell, so I didn't know I wasn't going to get my entire order, and neither did Blue Fern, but I have been working closely with them, and as I said, I'm driving up there to meet with them. We're going to be talking about the next collection that I'm actually working on. It's in the works, and while I'm meeting with them, they're just going to hand me my order, and so I'll be able to, get that and get everything shipped out. I'm excited. All right, so I just have these few little details that I'm adding to this, and then this will be it. I'm going to call it good. So I'm just adding these little bits of trim here and there, and just those little details that I like to add in to where I'll say it's done, and then about the 10th time after saying it's done, I'm still going. But yeah, I never know when to say something's really done. I can always see more, just like, but they do say when you start adding to it and you can't really tell much of a difference, that's when you know it's done. All right, well, I'm gonna call this good here. Like I said, I'm almost into it for, I think it's like an hour now. And so hopefully this will give you something to do till part 3 gets published. I do have the filming done for part 3. I will be busy filling orders and going to Tucson and all of that. But I do hope to have part 3 published in the next few days. So here I'm just adding in a few more things, a few more journal cards, some of that ephemera. And I didn't really want to, get too detailed with it. I ended up decorating it way more than I thought I was going to, but just because I think it was something new, I just wanted to kind of see how it was all going to come together. And the result so far, I'm really happy with it, and I hope all of you guys are too. If you did attempt it, I would love to hear. I would love to hear how it worked out for you. I do hope that you were able to follow along, and that I had the video going slow enough that it was easy enough for you to do that. Okay, I think I'm just going to add in a few extra ephemera pieces here and there. I've been rearranging things, as you can see, which is something I do a lot. And you might see something that you like, and you might end up doing it differently than me. But yeah, I thought that this was a lot of fun and something different. And again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. So, we did the few hidden paper clips, decorated those up, and then we have our signature page. And I'll probably go into decorating those other 2 hidden paper clips that I didn't get to, like I thought I might. I'll probably do that in part 3, add that in. I decided to take one of these receipts, and I do show in part 3 how I end up decorating these receipts. And for now, I'm just going to place it in there, and I am calling it done. All right, everyone, hope you enjoyed this. I hope you had lots of fun. Thank you all for the amazing support. Thank you so much. And yeah, I hope to catch you all back with part 3, which I hope to have out in the next 2-3 days. So thank you so much, everyone.